No officers will be charged in the death of Freddie Gray, who died in 2015 after being transported in a police van. Prosecutors are dropping charges against 3 officers still awaiting trial in a case that will not yield any convictions. Joining us now to discuss is Wall Street Journal reporter Scott Calvert. Hi, Scott. Thanks for being with us. Scott,
good morning.
Can you fill us in on the latest developments in this case? Why did prosecutors make this announcement today?
Well, it was really a shocker. This morning there was supposed to be a pretrial hearing in the case of Officer Garrett Miller, whose trial was about to start. That would have been the 5th trial. And instead, prosecutors said they were not going to prosecute him or the other 2. And then just a short while ago, Baltimore City State Attorney Marilyn Mosby, who's the chief prosecutor for Baltimore, gave a really fiery speech in which she talked about how agonizing it was to not proceed with these cases, but that, as she put it, the dismal likelihood of winning a conviction prompted her to take this course. They simply didn't think that they were going to get a different outcome given what had happened in the 3 most recent trials, which ended in acquittals.
Right.
These were all cases heard by the judge, and the evidence hadn't really changed.
So speaking of those earlier, the 3 of the 6 officers in this case were acquitted. The 4th had a hung jury. Why exactly did prosecutors have such a hard time making any convictions here?
Well, I think there are a variety of reasons. I mean, one is that you had the situation where you had this young man, go into the police van, by all accounts, without any serious injury, and he came out essentially dead. He was unconscious, not breathing, never recovered. And so the question was assigning criminal liability to one of the officers who were involved in this case at various points. And the bar is really high. They charged, for instance, 4 of the officers were charged with manslaughter, and the bar is really high to prove that. You have to show that the officer knew there was a risk of whatever he did or didn't do was going to cause death or serious bodily injury. And then this risk was disregarded. And the judge, in the cases that were decided, essentially said that the evidence just simply wasn't there to show that that they had proven the crime they were charging him with.
And so there's no chance they could be recharged with less serious crimes, is there?
Well, some of these officers were charged with less serious counts, like reckless endangerment, which is a little bit lower standard than manslaughter. There were some assault charges. There were some misconduct charges as well. And in all of those cases, the judge acquitted the 3 officers across the board. I mean, for instance, one of the things they based their charges on was the failure to secure Freddie Gray in a seatbelt, contrary to department policies. And essentially what the judge said was that didn't rise to the level of a crime. Even if that was a violation of department policy, it wasn't criminal behavior.
Okay, so now, what pressures had Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby been facing lately? I mean, obviously, she has become a public national figure as a result of this.
That's right. I mean, she had supporters and critics across the country, and I think at the Republican National Convention, her name was brought up, and she was booed. And there were a lot of people who thought that she had overreached with the charges. There was a rush to prosecute. She brought these charges less than 2 weeks after the death of Freddie Gray, right in the wake of the riots here in Baltimore. And so there were people who thought that she just acted too quickly without doing a proper investigation. But she had her supporters who thought, it's very rare to see this kind of prosecution brought, and more power to her. This kind of thing needs to happen. The police need to be on notice that if they do these things, there will be consequences. So there was a mixed bag.
Right.
But she was very defiant today that she had no regrets about bringing this case.
Right, and as you just mentioned, Mr. Gray's death prompted riots and protests over police treatment of minorities. Now, has the Baltimore Police Department addressed these concerns in the months since Mr. Gray's death, separate from the trial?
Right. Well, the police department has rolled out a number of changes. They rolled out body-worn cameras for police officers, not all of them, but a decent number. They have reconfigured the police vans. And they've also added cameras in the police vans. So if this kind of thing were to happen again, there would presumably be video showing what happened. Whereas one of the issues for prosecutors in this case was there was no video evidence or video record of what happened to Freddie Gray. And there's some other changes as well. They revised their use of force policy to emphasize the sanctity of life and emphasizing de-escalation, things like that. So they have taken some steps, yes.
All right, Scott, thank you so much for that.
Glad to be here.